Millionaire woman marries to inherit a fortune, but her new husband reveals a hidden agenda. Miranda Ashford had built her reputation on turning desperate situations into profitable opportunities. At 29, she commanded a boutique investment firm from her glass-walled office in downtown Chicago, where she specialized in acquiring distressed assets and restructuring them for massive returns. Her success was built on an almost supernatural ability to identify weakness in others and exploit it before they realized what was happening. But Miranda's own empire was built on borrowed time and leveraged debt that would collapse if she couldn't secure the capital injection she desperately needed. 3 major deals had fallen through in the past 6 months, leaving her firm dangerously overextended and vulnerable to the kind of hostile takeover she had orchestrated against countless other companies. The solution to her financial crisis appeared at a charity auction for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, where Miranda had positioned herself to network with the city's wealthiest donors. She was studying potential investors when she noticed Harrison Blackwell seated alone at a corner table, seemingly indifferent to the social maneuvering around him. At 52, Harrison represented everything Miranda aspired to achieve. His family's pharmaceutical fortune stretched back 4 generations, creating a dynasty worth an estimated $2 billion that had weathered every economic crisis through conservative management and strategic diversification. Unlike the nouveau rich who populated Chicago's social scene, Harrison possessed the kind of generational wealth that commanded respect rather than envy. But Harrison's personal circumstances made him vulnerable in ways that Miranda immediately recognized. His wife of 25 years had died from cancer 18 months earlier, leaving him isolated in a mansion that had been designed for entertaining, but now felt like a mausoleum. His adult children lived on opposite coasts, visiting only for holidays and major occasions that emphasized his loneliness rather than alleviating it. Miranda's research revealed additional details that made Harrison an ideal target for her strategic approach to relationships. His late wife Margaret had been his only romantic relationship since college, leaving him emotionally inexperienced despite his business sophistication. His grief had made him withdraw from Chicago's social circles, creating an isolation that someone with Miranda's psychological insights could easily exploit. The pharmaceutical industry was also facing regulatory challenges that threatened traditional profit models, making Harrison's conservative investment approach seem outdated to younger family members who were pressuring him to modernize their portfolio. Miranda's expertise in restructuring and her connections in emerging markets could provide exactly the kind of innovative thinking that Harrison's advisors were recommending. Miranda's campaign to win Harrison's attention was orchestrated with the precision of a military operation. She studied his charitable interests, his business philosophy, and his personal habits to create a profile that would allow her to position herself as the perfect solution to his loneliness and business challenges. The first conversation, carefully arranged through mutual acquaintances at the symphony auction, revealed Harrison to be more intelligent and perceptive than Miranda had expected. His questions about her investment strategies demonstrated sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, while his observations about her motivations suggested awareness that she was pursuing him for reasons beyond romantic attraction. But Harrison's awareness of Miranda's calculations didn't diminish his interest in her company. His years of marriage to Margaret had been built on genuine affection and shared values, but they had also been comfortable and predictable in ways that hadn't prepared him for the intoxicating excitement that Miranda represented. Miranda's attraction wasn't her beauty, though she was undeniably striking with her platinum blonde hair and designer wardrobe that projected success and sophistication. Her appeal lay in her intellectual intensity and her obvious hunger for achievement. She discussed business ventures with a passion that reminded Harrison of his own younger self, before wealth and responsibility had made him cautious and conservative. The following months, Miranda carefully cultivated Harrison's dependence on her company, while positioning herself as the answer to both his personal loneliness and his business challenges. She accompanied him to industry conferences where her insights impressed his peers, organized social gatherings that reintegrated him into Chicago's elite circles, and gradually became indispensable to both his emotional well-being and his professional decision-making. Miranda's strategy required her to balance genuine attraction with calculated manipulation. Harrison's wealth and influence were exactly what she needed to save her firm and elevate her social position. But his intelligence and experience meant that obvious gold digging would be counterproductive. She needed to make him believe that their relationship was motivated by mutual attraction and respect rather than financial desperation. The transformation of Miranda's circumstances during their courtship was dramatic and carefully orchestrated. Harrison's introductions opened doors that had been closed to her, while his financial backing allowed her to complete deals that had been stalled by capital constraints. Her firm's reputation improved dramatically as she gained access to Harrison's network of wealthy families and established businesses. But Miranda's success also created genuine affection for Harrison that complicated her original calculations. His generosity wasn't limited to financial support. He provided emotional stability and intellectual companionship that she hadn't experienced in previous relationships. His pride in her achievements was authentic and supportive, creating a dynamic that felt more like partnership than exploitation. Harrison's marriage proposal came during a weekend at his estate in Lake Forest, where they had been discussing the expansion of Miranda's firm into international markets. The ring was a family heirloom that had belonged to his grandmother, a gesture that represented acceptance into the Blackwell dynasty rather than just romantic commitment. Miranda's acceptance was immediate and enthusiastic, motivated by a complex mixture of strategic calculation and genuine emotion. Marriage to Harrison would solve all her financial problems while providing access to social and business networks that would ensure her continued success. But it would also formalize a relationship that had become more meaningful to her than she had originally intended. The wedding was held at the Four Seasons Chicago, an elegant affair that showcased the merger of two successful individuals rather than a romantic fantasy. Miranda's guest list included business associates and potential investors, while Harrison's family and friends represented 4 generations of American wealth and influence. The ceremony itself was both beautiful and strategic, designed to announce Miranda's transformation from ambitious entrepreneur to established member of Chicago's elite. Her dress was custom designed by Vera Wang. Her flowers were arranged by the city's most exclusive florist, and every detail was calculated to project an image of someone who belonged in Harrison's world. But the wedding also produced moments of genuine emotion that surprised both Miranda and Harrison. When they exchanged vows, Harrison's words carried vulnerability that revealed how completely he had committed to their relationship. When Miranda promised to honor and cherish him, her voice held sincerity that went beyond the strategic considerations that had motivated their courtship. Their honeymoon was spent touring Harrison's international business interests, visiting pharmaceutical facilities in Switzerland, Ireland, and Singapore. The trip served multiple purposes. It introduced Miranda to the global scope of the Blackwell Empire while providing opportunities for her to demonstrate her value as a business advisor and social companion. Miranda's first month as Mrs. Blackwell exceeded her most optimistic expectations. Her access to Harrison's resources allowed her to complete several major deals that established her firm as a major player in restructuring distressed assets. Her social position opened doors to exclusive events and private clubs that had been beyond her reach. Most importantly, Harrison's obvious affection and respect for her created a security that she had never experienced in previous relationships. But Miranda's triumph was built on assumptions about Harrison that would prove to be dangerously incorrect. She had viewed him as a lonely widower whose business acumen was limited by conservative thinking and outdated strategies. She believed that his affection for her had made him vulnerable to manipulation, and that his trust could be exploited for her continued advancement. The first indication that Harrison's agenda might be more complex than Miranda had realized came during their second month of marriage, when she discovered that several of her recent business successes had been facilitated by Harrison's behind-the-scenes interventions that went far beyond the introductions and recommendations she had attributed to his support. Harrison had been actively manipulating market conditions, influencing regulatory decisions, and coordinating with other investors to ensure that Miranda's deals succeeded in ways that seemed natural but were actually the result of sophisticated planning. His support hadn't been limited to providing access to his network. He'd have been orchestrating outcomes to serve purposes that Miranda was only beginning to understand. The revelation that her husband possessed this level of market influence and strategic thinking forced Miranda to reconsider everything she believed about their relationship. Harrison wasn't the emotionally vulnerable widower she had married. He was a master manipulator whose motivations remained completely opaque. As Miranda began to investigate the true extent of Harrison's activities, she discovered that her marriage to him might not have been the culmination of her own strategic planning, but rather the next phase of a much larger and more dangerous game that Harrison had been playing since long before they met. The truth about Harrison Blackwell began to emerge through details that Miranda had initially dismissed as coincidences, but now recognized as evidence of planning that stretched back years before their first meeting. Her discovery started with financial records that revealed patterns of investment and divestment that seemed designed to create the exact market conditions that had made her firm vulnerable to the crisis that forced her to seek external capital. Harrison's pharmaceutical empire had been quietly acquiring positions in companies that competed directly with Miranda's clients, while simultaneously shorting stocks in sectors where her firm was most heavily invested. The timing of these transactions suggested that Harrison had been tracking her business activities for at least 2 years, building a comprehensive understanding of her strategies and vulnerabilities. More disturbing was evidence that Harrison had influenced the 3 major deals that had failed in the months before their meeting. Through shell companies and proxy investors, he had manipulated regulatory approvals, financing arrangements, and partnership agreements to ensure that Miranda's firm would face exactly the kind of capital crisis that would make her desperate for the kind of support only someone with his resources could provide. Miranda realized with growing horror that her financial desperation hadn't been the result of market forces or business miscalculation. It had been systematically engineered by the man she had married. Harrison hadn't been a solution to her problems. He had been their architect, but Harrison's manipulation extended far beyond business machinations. His presence at the symphony auction hadn't been coincidental. He had purchased a table specifically to position himself where Miranda would notice him during her networking activities. His apparent loneliness and social withdrawal had been carefully crafted performances designed to make him seem vulnerable to the kind of strategic seduction that Miranda specialized in. Even Harrison's late wife, Margaret, had been part of his larger strategy, though Miranda struggled to understand how her death could have been planned or anticipated. Investigation into Margaret's illness revealed that her cancer treatment had been managed by doctors who were major recipients of Blackwell Foundation grants, creating relationships that could have influenced both the timing and effectiveness of her medical care. The possibility that Harrison had somehow contributed to his wife's death was too monstrous for Miranda to accept without absolute proof, but the circumstantial evidence was disturbing enough to make her question everything she believed about the man she had married. If Harrison was capable of orchestrating his wife's illness for strategic purposes, then Miranda's own safety might be at risk in ways she hadn't considered. Harrison's children, whom Miranda had met only briefly during their wedding, proved to be active participants in their father's schemes rather than the distant and uninvolved offspring she had assumed them to be. Both son and daughter possessed advanced degrees in business and finance, and their apparent distance from Chicago was actually strategic positioning in key financial centers, where they managed aspects of the family's operations that required anonymity and deniability. The Blackwell family's wealth wasn't just generational inheritance. It was the product of 4 generations of sophisticated manipulation of markets, regulations, and individuals. Their pharmaceutical business was legitimate and profitable, but it served as cover for investment activities that bordered on illegal market manipulation and insider trading. Harrison's marriage to Miranda represented the culmination of a plan designed to acquire control of her investment firm while eliminating her as a potential threat to Blackwell family interests. Her expertise in restructuring distressed assets had made her dangerous to companies that the Blackwells were positioning for hostile takeovers, while her growing reputation in Chicago's financial community had given her influence that could interfere with their long-term strategies. By creating the financial crisis that forced Miranda to seek external support, then positioning himself as her savior, Harrison had gained access to her client list, her proprietary investment strategies, and her network of contacts throughout the restructuring industry. More importantly, marriage had given him legal authority over her business decisions and financial assets that would allow him to destroy her career while protecting himself from retaliation. Miranda's investigation revealed that she wasn't Harrison's first target. Over the past 15 years, at least 6 other successful business people had experienced mysterious financial crises, followed by strategic marriages or partnerships with Blackwell family members or their associates. In each case, the target's expertise and resources had been absorbed into the Blackwell empire before they were discredited, bankrupted, or in 2 cases died in accidents that eliminated them as potential witnesses to the family's methods. Realization that Harrison had married her with the intention of destroying her created a terror that Miranda had never experienced in her ruthless business career. She had always been the predator in professional relationships, identifying weakness and exploiting it for personal advantage. Discovering that she had been the prey in someone else's much more sophisticated game was both humbling and terrifying. Miranda's investigation also revealed potential weapons she could use to defend herself. Harrison's confidence in his own superiority had led him to document his activities in ways that created evidence of criminal behavior spanning decades. His assumption that Miranda would be easily eliminated had made him careless about concealing information that could destroy not just him, but his entire family's criminal enterprise. The Blackwell family's activities involved conspiracy, market manipulation, tax evasion, and possibly murder on a scale that would interest federal prosecutors seeking high-profile cases. Miranda's position as Harrison's wife gave her access to financial records, personal communications, and business documents that could serve as evidence in criminal proceedings that would dismantle the family's operations entirely. More importantly, Miranda realized that Harrison's plan to destroy her contained a fatal flaw. His manipulation had been so successful that her firm's recent successes were entirely attributable to his behind-the-scenes interventions. If those interventions were exposed as criminal market manipulation, the legal liability would fall on Harrison rather than Miranda, while her reputation would benefit from being identified as a victim rather than a co-conspirator. Miranda's options were stark but clear. She could accept her role as Harrison's victim, allowing him to systematically destroy her career and possibly her life while she remained ignorant of his true intentions. Or she could fight back using the evidence she had discovered, accepting the risks that came with challenging someone whose resources and ruthlessness exceeded her own. The decision to fight required Miranda to transform herself from predator to prey and back again, using skills she had developed in business warfare to survive a personal conflict where the stakes were her freedom and possibly her life. Harrison's assumption that she would be passive and grateful had given her advantages he hadn't anticipated, but his resources and experience in eliminating threats made him a far more dangerous opponent than any business rival she had previously faced. Miranda's counterattack began with copying and securing evidence of Harrison's criminal activities, using her access to his home office and personal files to build a comprehensive record of the Blackwell family's illegal operations. She also began quietly liquidating assets and establishing financial accounts that would be beyond Harrison's reach if their conflict escalated to open warfare. But Miranda's most important preparation was psychological. Her marriage to Harrison had been motivated by ambition and strategic calculation, but it had also created genuine feelings that made her vulnerable to manipulation and betrayal. To survive what was coming, she would need to suppress those emotions and return to the cold, analytical thinking that had made her successful in business. The confrontation between Miranda and Harrison would determine not just who controlled her investment firm, but who would survive a battle between two ruthless individuals who had underestimated each other's capabilities. Miranda had married Harrison to secure her fortune, only to discover that he had married her to destroy it. Now their honeymoon was over, and both would need to decide how far they were willing to go to achieve their conflicting goals. Harrison's hidden agenda had been revealed, but Miranda's response would determine whether she became another victim of the Blackwell family's predatory strategies, or whether she could turn their own methods against them. The woman who had built her career on exploiting others' weaknesses was about to discover whether she possessed the strength to survive when someone more powerful and more ruthless attempted to exploit hers. The deadly game of deception that had brought them together was entering its final phase, where only one player could emerge victorious, and the loser would face consequences far more severe than financial ruin. Miranda had married to inherit a fortune, but she would need to fight to keep her life.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.